So she crawls over on top of me in the driver's seat, and she looks at me in the eyes and says, "Baby, I can't believe how hard you are." And I looked at her in the eyes and said, "I'm pretty sure that's the stick shift." Five, four, three. CGP Video Pictures presents Trek Tonight, Season 2. This week, Star Trek Film Series, Volume 7. With your hosts, Christopher Pitcher and Leo Byrne-Janicek. Featuring Keith Jacobson. Tonight's review, Star Trek 7 Generations, now live. From New York City, Wilmington, Delaware, and Everett, Washington, it's Trek Tonight. Hey there, Trekkers! Whoa, what is this? This is a very strange thing here. Hang on. Keith is muted.
All right, I'm unmuted now.
Yeah, you're unmuted. There we go. There's our usual setup. Okay.
There you go.
Hey, Trekkers, welcome to Trek Tonight. This is the final installment in our film series, and we're going to be talking about Star Trek Generations, the crossover film that goes from the original TOS cast to the Next Generation cast. And I have to apologize. I sound better tonight, but my there's that noise again. I don't know what that wacky noise is. It's like a gurgling. I don't know what that is. Hopefully, anyway, yeah, you guys hear it or no?
I do, yes.
Okay. It's like a weird gurgling. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Anyway, hopefully we'll lose it. But I was going to say my voice sounds better tonight, but I did that recording of the audio, the voiceover track for the opening yesterday amidst lungs full of Canadian smoke.
Yes.
So, yeah, that was nice. Somebody sent me a picture of two guys dressed all in like waving Canadian flags, wearing toques on their heads and everything. And it just said, "Sorry." Written in a Canadian accent. So, anyway, how are you guys doing? Leo, you're up in New York. New York that was sort of in the news.
It was during the middle of the day yesterday. The sky was orange. You know, the whole thing took on this sort of sepia, tone.
Right.
I went out a little bit later. I actually, I was supposed to meet. I don't want to get into a whole big thing. I was supposed to meet 3 people for drinks. 2 of them had to cancel because they just, like, their eyes were burning and they were, had a lot of, respiratory, it was really affecting them. So I met,
right.
I went, but there was a sort of a short, I had a beer and a shot. They were for a place called the Great Jones Cafe, which is closed a number of years ago. But they did sort of an anniversary thing at a place near where the old place was.
Right.
And they had some free food, had some chicken, some gumbo, had a Tecate beer and a Cajun shot. I'm not sure what sort of liquor it was. It was very potent and it was very spicy.
Very good.
But it was nice to get out a little bit. But I did wear a mask, and earlier today my nose was really running. So I think it was still.
I went out today and noticed a lot of people were wearing masks. And I remember when COVID first started, my big joke was I actually had like this thing that looked like a gas mask with a glass front to it, and I used it for painting cars is really what I used it for. But it looked really nasty. And I went out the first time I ever went grocery shopping, I wore that. And I got all sorts of crazy looks, but it was fun. And I almost cracked it out the other day. But for me, it all went right to my throat, and my sinuses, and I don't know, nasty. Hopefully, it's going to get better. Although now we've got fires burning in New Jersey, right?
They do, although I don't think it's the same volume, and the air quality last I checked was better than it was previously. So
I certainly had a lot of people sending me clips of Blame Canada from
Yes.
South Park too. So at any rate, all righty, shall we get to this interesting film? This sort of
Yeah.
half and half. It's like an Arnold Palmer of Star Trek.
Yes.
You know, you've got the next you've got the original cast in the opening, and then we get into the next generation.
I think it's a nice little movie.
Yeah, general impressions, guys. Keith, why don't you give us a start off?
Yeah, I think my general impression it's a nice little movie. I remember back in the day, I was really looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking forward to seeing a movie with the next generation crew, and I like the idea of a handoff movie between the two of them. And,
right.
And I remember being thoroughly entertained by this movie back then in the day. It was pretty, and I've now on a second viewing, and I haven't seen it since then really.
Right.
I thought it was also pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie. It's kind of like, it's not a great movie, and it's not a sucky movie either. It's just
right.
It's a pleasant movie.
Yeah, Leo, what do you think?
I think there's some good stuff in there. Although I see it's interesting because the opening of the film was supposed to be Spock and McCoy with Kirk. Leonard Nimoy was offered to direct the picture,
right,
and also to play Spock. He didn't want to do Spock. I'm not sure why he turned down directing it, but he turned down being in it because, well, there wasn't really anything for him to do.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, fair, although, you kind of feel like you could have gone in there, gotten a paycheck, and, so a lot of his lines went to Scotty. And,
right.
McCoy was just the insurance. They basically couldn't cover his insurance because his health was not great.
Right.
At the time. I'm not sure when he died. This was it came out in 94. And I think they shot it. They had a very short window to make this film. It was actually made in like 8 weeks or something like that.
Really?
And in fact, the cast, they were finishing up season 6.
Yeah.
And they had 4-day break, and then they went right and started shooting the movie.
Yeah. That's funny. Now that you say that, it kind of looks a little bit like it was shot in that short of amount of time.
But I think the film would have been better had they gotten DeForest Kelley and Leonard Nimoy to be in the opening. But
right,
I think it still works.
Yeah.
Originally they were going to have everybody in it. A lot of people were disappointed. Apparently, Whoopi Goldberg was disappointed because she expected to be able to do a scene with Nichelle Nichols.
Right.
And they were going to have Sulu as the helmsman, but they realized like he was already captain, so there's no. It would be like a weird demotion.
Yeah,
so they brought in his daughter, who I thought was kind of, it sort of tied into the story of Kirk sort of realizing like when did he have a family? Oh.
Sorry.
That's okay. Sorry.
So I think some of the changes they made worked.
Right. Now I'm getting an echo.
Yeah.
Let me leave the studio and see if it's coming from me, okay?
Okay. All right, great. Thanks, Keith.
So it's not a perfect film, but I think I enjoyed it more this time.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, I do think Kirk's death at the opening, ironically, we don't even see it. It's kind of the thing when you show up and he's just gone. Although,
right,
he's in the Nexus and not, dead. But that had a lot of weight. But his second death, spoiler for a movie that's 30 plus years old,
right,
or almost 30 years old now.
Right.
Yeah, it was 94 came out.
Yeah.
So I like.
We're getting old, buddy.
I'm just stumbling over my words.
Yeah, we're
tonight.
Yeah,
so it'll be edited out in post. I do think his second death wasn't as bad as I remember, because it felt like, not as bad, but it just felt like a little like, oh, he fell out, but he leaps over the broken bridge to get the device, and I really like Shatner in this. I mean, his acting style is very different.
Cliff Diamond says, Kirk's dead. You
Spoilers.
bastard.
But
Yeah, okay. So that was always the sore point for me. By the way, Scott Taylor is here. He gave us a thumbs up. Good
thank you, Scott.
see you again, Scott. Thank you. Let's bring Keith back in. Hey, Keith.
Hey, so is that better? Still an echo?
Yeah. No, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, one of the things I liked in that opening is when Ferris Bueller's friend, who's captain of the Enterprise B,
Captain Harriman,
yes,
played by Alan Ruck,
yes,
who also was on Spin City.
yes, that's right.
And in Speed. So,
but I love the fact that the ship was really just being sort of launched as a publicity stunt.
Yeah,
and that's why the original crew members were there.
Yeah,
and so when they start to get into trouble, I just love the looks on Shatner's face, on Kirk's face, where he's just getting more and more like antsy and like,
yeah.
I should be getting up. I should be doing something. I should be, and I thought that he did that very well.
I agree. I really liked his.
Frustrating. I think being an officer of his history and sitting there watching a guy who clearly was not prepared for any serious action at the moment,
No.
that it would be very frustrating to sit there and not be able to just leap in and take command, and then he ends up doing it.
Well, it's funny because he gives him there's the point where Cameron, let's call him Cameron.
Yes, we'll call him Cameron. Yeah.
He's like, I'll go down and rework the technobabble thingy.
Right.
And he gives Kirk, and Kirk sits in the center seat, and you can see him like, yeah, I'm home.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
home.
Yeah.
But then he's like, no, you're the captain. Your place is on the bridge. I'll go
Yeah.
do it.
Here's a shot of some of that moment.
Yeah.
Shatner just clearly, it's like, Kirk's like, I've got to do something. And I love Chekhov looking up at him like, yeah. And there's a moment, I think, where Scotty says to him something about,
is there something wrong with your seat?
There's something wrong with your seat. That's right. Exactly. And I loved that. I thought that was fantastic. So,
I still, with the exception of the big guys, the stars.
Yeah.
Starfleet seems to have a hard time getting quality captains. It seems like most of the captains who aren't named Picard or Riker or Sulu or Kirk or Pike just suck.
It's interesting. I think it's more of a writing thing because, Kirk is the hero. He's the captain, and it's funny because even in the original show, Kirk never had a thing where like, oh, this is my he had buddies on the ship, but he never had like it'd be like, oh, here's the captain of this other ship who's super cool as well. Like everybody, he was always like the alpha of the show. I mean, and part of that is because it was 1960s TV, and his name was first on the call sheet and first in the credits. Right. So, but if Harriman was as good a captain as Kirk, or at least, I mean, part of that is also like, imagine like you're trying to direct a scene and Martin Scorsese is like sitting there, like he's not, he's just like there to observe. You'd be like, oh my God, what am I you must think I'm an idiot, And it's one thing to have Kirk there where you're going to take a little loop around Pluto, come back to Space Dock, take some pictures, answer some softball questions. It's quite another thing when you're in, in a crisis situation and the ship isn't fully crewed and they don't have torpedoes and they don't have, so he was really, he was on his back foot,
Right.
And like I said, in the presence of this legendary commander of the Enterprise can't have helped.
Right.
So I cut him a little slack. Hey,
Cliff makes a point though that he says Matt Decker was a cool captain until he lost it.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
We've got that Fair point. Fair point.
And you know who else seemed pretty together was the guy. Oh, I can't remember his name now. Was he on the Lexington? The captain, the Commodore that
The
was in
Commodore, right?
charge
Yeah,
of during the M5 trials.
right.
He seemed like he was pretty together too.
Yeah, no, he was.
Yeah,
We
Tracy. Yeah, Cliff. Thank you. He's
you.
Tracy. Yeah, Captain.
Well, Captain Tracy was from Captain Tracy was from the Omega.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
Yangs of
The Yangs of the
Oh yeah,
Cons.
he was the guy who really lost.
Yeah, he was batshit crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's not go. We could easily go down this wormhole, but like I said, Kirk had a very heroic death. Although again, he doesn't really die.
Right.
So it does feel like it's just that the volume of like saving the ship, although he does save a whole bunch of lives by activating the rocket or deactivating the cloaking shield on the rocket, and you could argue that was a bigger sort of heroic moment,
right?
But I liked him. The scenes between him and Picard. I'm jumping ahead to where they're in the Nexus, and he seems to just be enjoying himself. Which he's just still. It's like cabinet left side second show.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I really did enjoy. I enjoyed Shatner a lot in these scenes where he was in his old cabin, and it was fun with him with Picard because. You can just see the sort of seniority in the sense that he's lived a whole life that Picard hasn't gotten to yet.
Yeah.
Picard's a lot stiffer in general than Kirk was.
Their acting styles are very different.
Yeah, very different. Yeah.
Although they're both classically trained actors, which is sort of the thing that people seem to
I'm not saying that Patrick Stewart's performance was stiff. I'm saying the character of Jean-Luc Picard is stiffer than the character of James T. Kirk.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I liked a lot of it. I thought they did some nice moments. We see a picture of them on the horses.
Yeah,
riding out. When Shatner's going to go out and try to re-meet the love of his life that he screwed up.
Originally they were going to use Carol Marcus. They were going to bring her in. But they thought that it would confuse people because we hadn't seen her since Wrath of Khan.
Right.
I would have preferred instead of Antonia. I mean, it's not, there's big swaths of Kirk's life that we don't know about. So
who else might have been fun? Ruth.
Ruth would have been a strong choice. Yeah. And I want to say that Joan Collins was still alive then. So even if she doesn't make an appearance, she could have done a voiceover,
right?
Right. But it doesn't.
Yeah, because that's true. In the Nexus could have given him Edith Keeler back.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it's funny because we only see a female figure on a horse like in the distance. We didn't.
Right. Right.
Aside from like one voice, like a couple of lines, like "Where's that breakfast?"
Yeah. Now we just if you're being chronological, we actually see Picard's Nexus universe first.
Yes.
And I had some shots of that, and taking place at Christmas. He's got children. Of course, it all looks very Victorian.
It is apparently Picard's perfect world is.
Yeah,
a Victorian, Christmas time.
Yeah, and then of course, while he's there, somehow or other, Guinan shows up. And what did you think of that? I don't really fully understand.
I think because she was briefly. Remember, all the people they rescued had been in the Nexus,
right?
So maybe it was an echo of her,
right?
They say that's an echo of her, and her species apparently has weird time and space powers. So,
although there was I don't know if this was in the novelization or something where they that she got her weird powers from being in the Nexus. But none of it is strictly canonical.
Right.
But I buy an echo of Guinan, and since they had a connection.
Well, I thought it was a nice
Yeah,
way of doing it. I liked it, and I liked seeing Guinan in that moment. I thought that was great, but I didn't fully understand the wiggly, timey-wimey aspect.
yeah.
But,
It's the next. Is,
hey,
I mean,
John Van Gosting is here, and he says, and let me know if you guys have heard of this. He said, I saw the fan film of this part of the Enterprise being recovered and Spock seeing where Kirk died, and then a weird flashback to Spock.
yeah, that was put up recently, where you see them recovering the saucer section,
Right.
which was going to be the season finale for season 6, which was the two-parter with the Borg and Lore.
Right.
But they couldn't do it on it. They didn't think they could do it convincingly on a TV budget, but they saved it and used it for the movie. So,
Gotcha. Interesting.
But let's talk a little bit about Worf finally becoming a lieutenant commander.
Yeah, so let's go ahead to that. And so you cut to this clearly holodeck moment.
Yes.
Where we see Worf. He gets brought out in irons. They're on board a old sailing ship named Enterprise, and then they act as though he's a prisoner, and they're reading out his what he's accused of, and of course it's his being promoted, and they're talking about how great he is and everything else.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of fun.
It was, and he gets the hat. Nobody ever gets the hat.
Yeah,
they make him jump on the plank, get up and get his hat, and he gets it. And then Riker says, get rid of the plank, but he didn't say like draw it back. Although it felt like Riker was doing that deliberately to like.
I think so.
Would Riker do something like that deliberately?
To Worf?
Yes, he wouldn't. Yes,
absolutely.
Of course he would. Yeah.
No, he wouldn't. He would definitely not do
another
that.
example of Worf.
Data has his like, I don't understand like how plunging somebody into icy cold water is humorous, and the doctor says, well, listen, you just got to get in the spirit of things, and he pushes her off the ship.
Right.
And everybody is like aghast, and I'm like, I actually thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I don't know why that's not as funny. I don't get it.
I think it's just as funny, if not a little funnier.
Yeah.
Because she's all like, "Oh, get into the spirit," and it's like, bloop.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like get in the spirit of our continuous Worf baiting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I felt that was a perfectly cromulent joke, and I think they, no wonder Data has trouble with emotions because he's getting all this conflicting information.
Yeah, exactly.
From the rest of the crew.
Exactly.
But then Picard finds out that both his brother and his nephew were killed in it was a fire or shuttlecraft. Was it not a shuttlecraft? But it was a fire. They were burned to death.
Right.
And he has a bit of a breakdown because he's like, it's the last of the Picards because he doesn't have a family.
Right.
Although it turns out he will, but not for many years.
Right.
And he's actually really like weeping openly, and everybody's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "I'm fine," very clearly not fine. And Deanna gets him to to sort of cop to what's going on.
Right.
But then they get a signal from this solar array, if I'm remembering it correct. The station.
Yeah.
You guys are looking at me like I'm talking Chinese.
No. Yeah,
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I said yeah. You're right.
Yes. All right. So, and
what the hell are you talking about, Leo?
What movie did you watch?
What are you talking about? Titanic? What are you talking about?
Yeah. So they go over there and they find Dr. Soren. And Data's also put in his emotion chip because he feels like I got it. Like I was worried, but I think I should do it.
Yeah.
And even Jordy's like, I don't know, Dana.
Yeah.
It does feel like in the middle of something, like he might be like, wait till you get back to like when you go on leave, because
Yeah.
then at least you're not in a life and death situation. If something goes bad, you know, people's
Well,
lives
okay,
will be.
so remind me briefly, because I didn't have time to look this up. Where does he get the emotion chip from? Does it come from lore?
He got it. Well, originally, Sung made it for him.
Right,
Lord stolen it,
right,
and presumably he got it from Lore after the events of that Borg, uh, crossover where Lore was running the Borg like his own private army.
right,
And
right.
they dismantled it, and they presumably removed the emotion chip, and Data got it.
Right. Okay. Because I
That's
knew
my
Laura
guess.
was involved in it somehow, but I
Right.
just didn't remember exactly. Okay. Yeah. All right. Very good. Very good. Um,
But no, when they installed that chip, were they in the middle of a crisis at that point, or were they
I guess
just?
they weren't, but they weren't like it. It does feel like kind of thing you might tell the captain or the first officer about, like, hey, by the way.
well, yeah, no, they weren't in a situation until after he installed it, and then he
Yeah.
has to go over, and they beam over to the thing, and then all of a sudden, they're checking it out, and then they discover Soren, and then all of a sudden he starts to get afraid, and
Yeah, I mean, he also starts laughing about a joke that was like 7 years ago.
yeah. Is that
And
when he's doing the talking the tricorder too?
that was when they were investigating, like they found the secret room, the shielded room. And he's like, I don't know. Like, and again, it's interesting because he also, like, when they're in trouble, Soren shows up and he's like, starts shooting up the joint to, get his special torpedo.
Yeah.
And Data immediately turns into a coward. Now, I can't predict what it would be like to have no emotions and suddenly have all these emotions.
Right.
But it does feel like, it's not like he didn't understand the danger to himself previous to that.
But he didn't. Yeah. Well, it was because of having to deal with fear for the first time.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But it just felt like a very, like, I know Data suddenly became very sort of like, like slightly bipolar.
Yeah.
Not to make light of that condition.
Yeah. No.
Right.
Yeah.
I like the version of Data's emotions that we got in Picard better than the version.
Well, I was gonna say, Keith, that having that moment now in my head made this one seem a little silly and kind of weird. Whereas I liked what they did with him at the end of Picard. Now, the idea that he becomes a therapy junkie at the end, which I thought was really funny, is a better extension of what we're seeing now.
But
now,
that said, I really do like, every time I see Brent Spiner do stuff like this, I really am kind of, amazed at his range. I think he's really, I don't know. I like Brent Spiner.
No, usually personally he gets when he does wacky Data, when he like Data has something going a little off, he definitely it feels like a very different character, although still Data. So yeah, I agree. And let's mention Dr. Soren is played by Malcolm McDowell. In the history of Star Trek, using a lot of great British actors in smaller roles or featured roles. He's sort of an interesting bad guy because he lost his family because of the Borg.
We might want to point out to Chris that he's muted.
Yes, you're muted, Chris. I don't.
Yeah, that was so you didn't hear me hacking up Canadian smoke for about a few minutes.
That's right.
Here it's just Han.
Yeah. Here's a shot of the three of them on the platform, and there's McDowell in the middle and Jean-Luc on the end, and then Soren in the middle, and then Kirk. Yeah, I liked him as a villain. I mean, I thought he was again understandable, but then also doing something terrible.
I mean, the best villains, like, you have a point of view, you could be like, yeah, I could sort of see that, although it does feel like, his destruction of, because there's another planet, warped civilization,
right,
on another planet in that system. So killing off, millions of people seems to be like, I'm not sure the rate of return on that. Maybe for you it's good, not so much for them.
Yeah,
it does feel like he could have calculated a better way to get into the Nexus.
Right.
But,
yeah.
I mean, I guess if he did it, we wouldn't have the movie. So,
I mean, I don't know why he couldn't have just hired a ship and then flown into the path of the Nexus. But
the energy of the ribbon tends to fuck everything up. So
right, but I mean, it put Kirk in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, jump out in a spacesuit and calculate. I don't know. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could argue all this, but that's not the way it happened.
Right.
So,
exactly. Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's funny, as much as Kirk, like, his perfect life was this sort of pastoral, sort of cabin in the woods with his horses. Shatner loves to ride, so that comes up any chance he can get.
Yeah.
And I guess Patrick Stewart, I knew the character Picard was an equestrian, as we find out. But
yeah, in Next Generation, isn't there some bit about some special saddle that he has?
Yes, there was the one where they just sort of do Die Hard on the Enterprise, where they're doing a barium sweep to sort of get rid of barium. I don't remember.
I don't know.
It was some techno thing where basically they have to, this dangerous radiation would pass through the ship and disinfect it effectively.
Yeah,
and a bunch of people trying to steal stuff off the Enterprise. Tim Russ was one of the terrorists, and he goes on and he said he was Mr. Mott the barber, and because he'd gone back because they were trying to avoid a dinner party with this very boring Starfleet officer on the base on the world. And a perfectly nice guy, but just one of those guys who just went on and on and on.
Yeah,
and everybody was like, "Oh my god!" Except for Data, who seemed happy to talk to him.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know if Patrick Stewart is an equestrian. He very well maybe.
Right.
But I know Shatner raises horses, and I'm sure any chance for him to get into the saddle in a movie is a good one for him.
Sure. So. Well, he came from the era of Westerns.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
And by the way, did you notice? I think we got to see Shatner show off his horse riding skills a little bit. He had that horse move sideways.
Yeah. I don't think Shatner was doing the jump, but.
Well, you never know. Like I said, he's a big horse guy. I didn't research that, but
yeah, he might have been. Who knows?
Depends on the insurance. That's the thing,
Yeah,
right.
Right.
Although Tom Cruise is hanging off of Russian transport planes.
Yeah.
For real, which seems bananas.
It seems bananas to me too. Yeah.
But one of these days he's going to die doing. I'm not going to be happy when that happens. But
yeah,
it just feels like a inevitable headline.
Yeah. Well, isn't he going to go off and get his own planet somewhere?
His own what?
His own planet. He's a Scientologist. When he dies, doesn't he go off and get his own planet or something?
I don't really know enough about it.
Religion, but I remember something about you getting your own planet.
Well, good for him.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. Hey, and there's a perfect moment for us to cut to commercial, guys. We will be right back after these words.
Playmates Toys, the finest collectibles within the Star Trek universe. How you choose to get around out here makes so little sense. Ooh, mon capitaine. Who would have thought that they would have been so fascinating? Certainly not I. Starfleet. Such drama. Oh, please. You're all such savages. Enjoy your little trek through the stars. I'll see you out there.
45486.1. After delivering needed supplies, the Enterprise shuttlecraft is threatened by disruptor cannon fire from a renegade Klingon attack cruiser. The shuttlecraft fires back with its phasers, which are deflected by the Klingon shields. Suddenly, the Enterprise appears, firing her photon torpedoes. The Klingon cruiser is overwhelmed, activates its cloaking device, and is gone. Under impulse power, Enterprise maneuvers out of orbit before engaging warp drive. Star Trek: The Next Generation. New action accessories from Playmates.
All systems down, abandoned ship! Transporter ready, beaming down Guinan. All life systems failing. Geordi LaForge's now being transported. Hurry! Warp beaming down. Ship breaking up. Transporter ready for data. That's not data, it's lore. Wait a minute, what's going on? Now all systems normal? What's happening? Oh, Q, of course. Testing us again.
Star Trek: The Next Generation. New action figures and transporter from Playmates.
Star Trek!
This is the exploration pod of the USS Enterprise, part of the Star Trek collection, each sold separately.
Star Trek!
This is the Klingon cruiser and the Vulcan shuttle. Vulcan shuttle has a breakaway cockpit. You can pretend they battled through space as you send the Enterprise to the rescue.
Star Trek!
USS Enterprise, Klingon cruiser and Vulcan shuttle from the Star Trek collection, each sold separately by Mego.
Did you know that was the exploration pod?
Silly me, and I've been calling it the saucer section for all these years. I'm wrong.
That's could be two things. That one with Q with John Delancey must be somewhat recent.
It has to.
They had Saru in there.
Yeah, yeah. But I did think it was really kind of an obnoxious commercial. Enjoy your little trek through the stars. It's like, okay.
Well, I mean, he's leaning into it.
Yeah.
You can't fault him for that.
Well, I figured I'd throw in some next gen toys.
Oh, that was good. I like that. I like
we're switching over to next gen tonight and talking about the generations. So, but yeah. Anyway, so what else do we have to say? We've got they get to the planet, and Picard convinces Shatner to come help him, and he figures, one more adventure, he's going to go do this, and so they try to stop Sauron. So you've got that whole sequence.
Well, also, here's the thing: is like because Picard was down on the planet with Sauron, and Sauron has like this deflector shield around his whole little setup.
Right.
But there's like a little arc of stone that that Picard climbs through to get through.
Yes.
To sort of avoid being zapped. And they go through, but he launches the thing, the Nexus comes in, and the planets are destroyed. Also, the Enterprise crashes the saucer. So not only everybody in the Enterprise is dead.
Right.
This other planet is dead, all this stuff, and then Picard starts, has his Victorian fantasy, which is, it's like, it is interesting because it just feels very much like Picard, very staid. It would have been interesting, like, if his Christmas, like his fantasy was like a little more like crazy. Like we got somewhere like, whoa, I didn't know about that about Picard.
Yeah.
So we like,
yeah.
But I guess he was feeling wistful for this sort of like idealized family.
They were very ordered children.
Yes.
Papa.
Well, it was a fantasy after all. So
yes, it was. Yeah.
Speaking as a dad, you only get children that ordered in a fantasy.
Yeah.
His nephew was there.
Get your hands out of the punch. Yeah. So.
I asked you if you had to go to the bathroom before we left.
Wait, that ornament is glass. Put it down.
Let's talk about the Enterprise crashing for a second.
Okay.
Sure.
So one of the things I've been seeing on social media recently, so we had during Picard, we had Troy driving the Enterprise during the final season of Picard. Then we got Data doing some of it. We got Data doing his thing in there. And I kept seeing things on social media saying this was to give Troy an opportunity to make up for crashing the Enterprise. And I'm thinking, so now watching, I'm going, what the hell? She didn't crash the Enterprise. It got, if anything, it's Riker's fault. But or Troy's, but somebody's fault. I'm not quite. Why is this Troy's fault? The Enterprise crashed. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, she brought it down, which is pretty impressive with minimal casualties.
Right.
I'm not sure anybody died. I think like some people got hurt, probably some broken bones and stuff.
Right.
But she got them all down in one piece, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Considering sort of the lack of aerodynamics of that. I mean, it's probably more aerodynamic than, let's say, a Borg cube. But reality, that thing would be flipping all over the place. They would, it'd probably be like a fine jam or jelly on the interior of that ship. So I think she did a remarkable job.
Yeah.
Getting everybody down in one piece. So I will not hear word one against our favorite counselor's helm abilities.
Yeah.
She clearly was paying attention. I have
to admit, I did think that I thought, what are the name of those two Klingon?
The Duras sisters.
The Duras sisters, right? I actually thought their plan of sabotaging, hacking Geordi's visor, was actually a pretty good plan, right out of something I would do in a role playing game. So
yeah. No, I thought it was a great idea, and the idea that that's how they figured out what the frequency of the shields was fantastic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the scene where you see, Dr. Crusher looking like kindly down on Geordi after giving him a visit, and she, and Kate McFadden is gorgeous.
Oh,
and she's always been gorgeous, and they're like, ugh, human females are so
ugly,
unattractive. They're these snaggletooth.
Yeah.
They were played a little more for comedy than they were on Next Gen.
Maybe, yeah.
They weren't incompetent, but they weren't.
No,
like there was a bit of like,
but there was they were hit a little bit more with the hag stick than they were.
Yeah,
There's
certainly. But, they really leaned into that. But there was some. I made some notes. Well, later on we'll talk about. There was an interesting group of people on the bridge of the Enterprise B, but there was one of the guys, like one of the bigger Klingons, and I recognize that guy. Like what is he? He's always plays sort of like sinister figures. He always plays heavies, and I think he was in X-Files. There was this guy who was like one of the cohorts of the Smoking Man. He's this big, sort of a big forehead, like a big, strapping motherfucker. And that guy, like I recognized him even under all the makeup.
Well, Tim Russ was in there too, wasn't he?
Tim Russ, okay, let's talk about the Enterprise B. Tim Russ was an unnamed lieutenant, a human. The guy who's the navigator was played by Glenn Morshower, who's both been in TNG, Voyager, and Enterprise.
Okay.
You remember he was in the first couple of seasons of 24. He was a Secret Service agent.
Cool.
He's one of those guys that tends to play straight arrows.
Yeah, love that show.
If you read the episode where Riker was commanding the this derelict ship, and it was the War Games episode where he had Wesley on, and Wesley's like, "Oh, I forgot an experiment back on the ship," and he got that thing. That was the guy who was a security guy who had to escort Wesley to engineering to get his experiment. And so he's been in a number of things. And here's the real gem is the science officer was played by an actress by the name of Jeanette Goldstein, who was Vasquez in Aliens.
Oh wow!
Cool.
I love
Jeanette
her.
Goldstein. Vasquez, who looked. I mean, it's debatable whether casting a Jew to play a Latina is whether that's where that
Yeah.
lands on the sensitivity or insensitivity rating, but it was the 80s.
Right.
So you're going to have to sort of hand wave it. But, she definitely, she cut her hair short and she hit the gym to play Vasquez. But how she appeared, in this movie is a little more how she looks, in everyday life.
Yes.
So, but it was kind of a neat little moment to have a little sci-fi crossover.
I mean, I bought her as a Hispanic.
Yeah, she was good.
Yeah.
Hey, Vasquez, anybody mistake you for a man? He says, no. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, that was fun.
Yeah,
and it's not nearly as bad as what's his name in Breakfast at Tiffany's. So.
Oh, let's not. Oh, Mickey Rooney.
His name went right out of my head. I couldn't think of it.
Mickey Rooney. That's
Mickey Rooney.
That is rough. That is some rough road.
Oh yeah.
That you're watching this Audrey Hepburn and George Papard, and you're like, oh, this is great, and then it's like, oh my god, this other. It's like Mickey Rooney is in a completely different movie.
Yeah. Miss Golightly.
Yeah.
I know. It's
awful.
terrible. Absolutely terrible. Anyway, just a minor rabbit hole. So yeah. I mean, there and I we're sort of jumping back, but excuse me. But the whole thing with the press jumping all over them and stuff was great.
Yeah, it was funny. There was Kirk. What have you been up to, Captain? You retired. He says, I've been keeping busy.
Yeah.
And he kept I'm just here to see the new captain off.
Right.
He's trying not, because everyone has to talk to him, and he's obviously it's funny because we've never seen Kirk deal with the press. We very rarely see any Starfleet personnel have to deal with the press.
Right.
And it's funny because you think about it, because there's certain military people we know about, but they're generally like generals or admiral, like people, very, very high ranking people, because they're in charge of Desert Storm or they're testifying in front of Congress or something. I couldn't name you one commander of a ship, one of our ships of the U.S. Navy right now.
Right.
But Kirk is apparently renowned. I mean, he certainly had his toe in many sort of prominent galactic affairs.
Yes.
No pun intended.
Right.
So I guess he must get press coverage.
One would think. I mean, he was somewhat responsible for saving the Earth countless times. So.
Yeah, you think they might that might rate a breaking news.
Yeah,
the Federation News Network. FNN.
On that point, if we had though. I'm just thinking back to some of the historically speaking, we haven't really had any single ship captains do anything specifically
remarkable
that would get them in the news. The news has always been made by the admirals. I'm thinking back to where Star Trek kind of gets its inspiration from in some ways, the Age of Sail kind of thing.
Yeah.
There were ship captains who did make the news. If they had a particularly historical battle with someone. I know during 1812, we had several U.S. Navy ship captains who became quite famous in the United States because of single ship actions they had. We haven't really had anything like that really since where we've made heroes of captains in a very long time.
The closest thing I can think of is that airline pilot that landed everybody.
Sullenberger.
Yeah.
Sully Sullenberger.
Yeah, Sully. That's the closest thing I can think of to somebody who was in charge of some sort of a craft that made the news.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, again, I'm not poo-pooing that, but it's sort of just interesting.
Oh yeah.
But it's the first time we got to Kirk had to be like all the press and everybody's got cameras on their heads and they're like, Captain, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
But it was kind of a neat. I always like seeing I'm always intrigued by seeing parts of the Federation that aren't necessarily a starship. You get to see what life is like on Earth or on a colony or a space station. I mean, that's sort of what Deep Space Nine was like, because only three out of the what, like 8 main characters were Starfleet. Cisco, O'Brien, and Dax.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
and Bashir.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Odo, Quark, Jake,
Right.
Kira. It was a fair amount of non-Starfleet personnel. Rom, not a main character, but certainly a recurring character.
Right.
So
Yeah, Quark.
yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about something and now it just went right out of my head. Oh well, it'll come back. So what else do we have to say? I mean, we talked about Shatner's death. Kirk's death.
Yeah, Shatner's still kicking.
Yeah, Shatner's
Yes.
still kicking. There he is in some very strange picture of him with Malcolm McDowell, and then this is where he gets crushed under the thing and eventually dies.
And he says it was fun. I think it's interesting because despite his sort of fantasy of this, like, country gentleman
Right.
sort of, idea, there's a reason Kirk never settled down, and he even says it to Picard. He says, don't let them promote you. Don't let them, take you off that bridge. That's where you can make a difference.
Right.
He's not a guy who can settle down and have a family, even though he might have that desire, but there's always the siren call of what's out there. And at least which is a very Star Trek conceit. I mean, like, again, I can't speak to what it's like to be a commander of any sort of ship. I don't know whether there's still that draw. I mean, there's not much exploration being done necessarily by naval vessels anymore, because
Right.
We could go into space. But I imagine that's sort of hardwired into his character. He's not he's married to his ship. He's always wants to be other. He clearly wanted to take command of the Enterprise, but he was like, no, I'm not going to do it because I'm not. I'll help in another way. I can still help.
Right.
And I don't want to steal this guy's thunder.
Right.
But
I see complaints that people thought that his death wasn't all that heroic.
Right.
I thought it was heroic. I thought it was a fine death.
In rewatching it seems more heroic than my memory of it was initially.
Yeah, because my memory of it was he kind of tripped and fell off a scaffolding, which is not 100% true.
No.
Yeah.
But
But there are a lot of people that give that shade. I apologize, guys. Yeah.
Blame it on that Canadian smoke.
Hey.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Sorry about that. That's right.
Yeah. I think this is it's because originally there were plans on having the crew the original series meet the crew of the Next Generation, and then they had the idea of them fighting, which was like an exciting idea, but they were like they couldn't really make it work,
Right.
And
You mean like fisticuffs or like?
I mean, I guess like the ships going at it, like
Okay. Yeah.
because apparently they had an idea for a poster with the two ships sort of facing off to each other.
Uh-huh.
Now, here's the thing: is like when you've got it, like the Enterprise D is a much more advanced ship than the original Enterprise.
Right.
It's like 80 something years in the future.
Yeah.
87 years in the future or so. So, strictly speaking, you would have to handicap the Enterprise D in some way for it to be an even fight. But there's Star Trek technology that you always have to hamper, because if you just use the technology like transporters, there has to be some sort of interference. The transporters are blown out. There always has to be, or it's too. The old show was like, it's too deep underground. We can't go through that much stone.
Right.
You always have to find a way, because otherwise you've got this very powerful ship. Even the original ship can beam people up and down from a planet. sensors can pick up all sorts of information.
Right.
Right.
So you always have to find ways that they can't just beam somebody right out. It has to,
Yeah.
because it's not dramatic. It's not interesting. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, guys, we got 5 minutes left of the hour. Is there anything we didn't cover on this flick?
You know, it's a nice movie.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, other than the fact that people complain about Kirk's death, there's not a lot in it that's really all that controversial.
Right.
No,
it's not controversial. I think
it could have been a little better. Like if they'd had Nimoy, DeForest Kelly at the beginning, but you know,
and it's a much smaller. It's in many ways it's a much smaller film than the other ones.
Yeah.
When you made the comment earlier that it was shot in 8 weeks, and I made the quip, it sounded obnoxious, but I didn't really mean it to be, that it was shot in 8 weeks, and I said, well, I can see that. It's because the whole scale of the film feels smaller than a lot of the other ones.
In a way, yeah. It's interesting that it also, like many movies, for some reason, the bridge becomes very dark. Like the bridge in Picard, maybe Picard's quarters were dark because he was sort of in a sort of a sorrowful, contemplative mood.
Right.
But there is this weird lighting that you get in movies that you don't get in TV necessarily, where everything gets dark. But I enjoyed it. You know, it was worth another watch. It is difficult to sort of bridge the two series because while there's a lot of overlap on the Venn diagram, they also are tonally different shows in many ways.
Right.
It's tricky because there's the huge, you know, gap in time between the two series. So, you know, a lot of, with the exception of Spock, and then a very aged McCoy who was, you know, they put him in old age makeup in Counter and Farpoint.
Right.
But I would enjoy it. I will say, I got this. I'm going to show you something. This is the Enterprise B.
Oh,
it's
neat.
one of those little Japanese blind boxes. I actually got it at New York Comic Con a number of years ago.
Oh, cool.
And it is the B. It was an already open box, and I think I paid maybe $2 for it. It's kind of a neat little
yeah,
ship.
that's cool.
It's not a terrible design.
Yeah.
I think it's a variation of the Excelsior class. I don't think it's exactly the same, but which is okay. But I enjoyed revisiting it, and you know, then we got a bunch of really interesting next gen films, most of which were pretty good, I would say.
Yeah.
We may visit those sometime after Strange New Worlds.
Yes,
Strange New Worlds,
which is coming next week.
All very excited.
I'm very excited.
I'm not excited at all. I could care less.
I'm actually wearing my tunic just in anticipation of Strange New Worlds. I have a Discovery yellow tunic, but it's not the same one as the one they ended up.
Yeah, well, there was slightly that sort of like
sort of asymmetrical thing.
Yeah, I didn't hate that. You know, but
no,
I like the uniforms they wear.
Yes,
because it is just enough like the old uniforms.
Yeah, and personally for me, I've been going back and sort of cherry picking through some of my favorite episodes from season 1 in my spare time. And I'm also I do a lot of, as you may know, because you see me sometimes do this show from Connecticut. We have a place in Connecticut and a place in Delaware. So I do a lot of driving because it's about a 5-hour ride. So I listen to a lot of books on tape, and I've been picking up through Audible. Audible? Yes. I'm pronouncing that right?
Yes.
Yes.
You are.
At any rate, some Star Trek books that I've been listening to, mostly TOS era books. And right now I'm in the middle of almost actually a little bit more than halfway through a really nice book. And now, of course, I didn't write down all the information about it, except that it's called The Antares Maelstrom. I don't have the author in, but I'll post it on the Facebook page, and it's really quite good. I know a couple of weeks ago I was trash talking some Star Trek book I listened to that I said was this terrible called The Lost Years. But this one's really good. And the fellow, I'll also post his name, who is reading the book, does a wonderful job in a very subtle way of doing the voices of the TOS cast. So it's a nicely put together book, and I'm really enjoying it. So I'll post that up for, we were talking about maybe doing a little book corner here at some point on Trek Tonight, where we talk about books we've read and so on. So at any rate, all right, guys. Any last comments on the film before we leap into next week with Strange New World?
I was glad to see Spot survived.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a good movie. I like this movie. I'm glad.
Yeah, it was okay. It was all right. It's not. I saw it when it came out, and then I saw it during my pandemic trek through Trek, and then I saw it again for tonight's show. It's okay. It's all right. It's fine. Has some nice moments in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that I was talking with someone else, and they found the jump between the two time periods a little jarring. But
I
suppose I can see that.
Yeah.
I would only be jarring if you didn't know it was going to happen.
Right.
I mean, that's.
Okay. Hey, Angela says, not the worst Star Trek film, and she is right about that.
She should know.
We forced her to watch some of the worst Star Trek
We did.
films.
Hey, Angela, what is the worst Star Trek film?
Yeah, I'd be curious. What do you think the worst one is? I bet I can guess. Yeah. Do I hear the name Cybok?
Well, Cybok did make a bit of an appearance.
She says, you know. Yeah. Hey, you bums. Yeah.
Well, Cybok, maybe I wonder if he'll make an appearance this season.
Yeah.
Because
He might.
When Chris and Leo were asking for who wanted to be on that show, pretty much everybody who knew what they were getting into, not me.
Yeah.
Not it.
Not it.
Yeah, Angela
took
I'll do it, not having seen the movie.
She took a phaser stun for the team.
Yes, she did. All right, guys. Well, again, if you're stumbling across this program for some reason and you enjoyed it, please make sure that you like and subscribe to our program.
Please, yes.
I used to have a like and subscribe thing in here. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. Like and subscribe. There it is. And ring the bell for notifications so you know when our next episode is. Although pretty much our episodes are weekly with great regularity. We're on episode 68. Can you believe that, Leo? This is the 68th episode of Trek Tonight.
That's more episodes than years I've been alive.
Oh, that's funny. Well, soon we're going to get beyond the amount of episodes there were of the original series.
It's true.
So there we go. At any rate, yeah. So also, as I've mentioned before, there is a podcast version of this episode, which you can find on any of your favorite podcast locations, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, Prime. We're on all sorts of things. And you find that there's a lot less of that in the podcast because we sit down and edit it.
Yeah.
So there's lots of less fumfering and lots of less ums. So if you enjoy the ums and the fumfering, make sure you watch us here. Otherwise, you can listen to the sleek version on your favorite podcast location. So at any rate, I'm going to roll us out of here. I have an early doctor's appointment tomorrow.
All right.
All right.
I'm going to get rolling, but have a wonderful week. Live long and prosper, folks. And we will see you next week with the first episode of season 2 of Strange New World.
Yeah.
So excited. All right. Bye-bye. Have a great week.
You too.
long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.